All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. It is Sunday morning, March 9th at 8:33 a.m. A little daylight savings time podcast spring forward. So we're drinking our coffee this morning, but always Big Hitters Only, brought to you by Delta Spirits, a THC-based beverage. Check out drinkdeltaspirits.com. Shout out Trent Lamar. He messaged me this morning, said he was drinking some this morning, or maybe last night. I don't know. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com, promo code BHO10. We'll talk about it again later in the podcast, but check that out. All right, special podcast. We have repeated guest David Allen and his father now, Mr. Allen, longtime principal at Shelby High School and a big Carolina fan and fires off on Twitter sometimes. And we have Spenser Dalton, former UNC walk-on. We're going to break down the Duke game extensively, wrap up the regular season here, and then get a little bit into the kind of ACC tournament seeding and what UNC needs to do to make the NCAA tournament. UNC falls to Duke in the Smith Center, 82-69. Hell of a game. David was in the building. I was in the building. I'm sure Spenser watched from Richmond.
Sure did. Yep.
All right. Let's get right into it. I want to go straight to Mr. Allen, Principal Allen. We'll give him the spotlight here. Initial takes on this loss. Back and forth. UNC took a huge lead, not a huge lead, but got back into it at the end of this first half off a big run with Cooper Flag out, and then took a 7-point lead in the second half before things kind of fell apart. Mr. Allen, what were your takes? Give us initial thoughts on the game.
Absolutely. I honestly thought that, Carolina last night was kind of in the situation they've been in several times this year, is looking for that second or third score. We talked about Cade Tyson. We've talked about him all year, really not fitting that role that Cormac Ryan from last year. And I think last night they were really hurting for that. I know me and David were talking about in about 14 minutes to go, up by 4, and they bring Wash and Cadeau back in the game, and there's just nobody on the floor that can score at that point. So I think they're really still looking for that consistent second score. Jackson last night, 50% from the field, but he didn't get enough shots. Meanwhile, you got the combination of Cadeau, Trimble, and Withers taking 28 shots last night, and that's just not going to get it done. And they were like 8 for 28, so they just didn't get it done from the field last night.
RJ Davis with 20 points. He was insane there in the first half. Finished 4 for 9 from 3, 7 for 15 from the field. I mean, he was awesome. And then his last basket was the 17:34 mark in the second half. He scored. That was his 20th point. Never scored again. Went cold. Hubert Davis pulled him out. He had a little cramping, and that's kind of when Duke took over, when Hubert pulled him out. David Ray. What I love about this, we got a variety of accents here on the Big Hitters Only. Mr. Allen with a strong Shelby, West North Carolina accent. Last episode was Rod Baxley, a deep Bladenboro, North Carolina accent. So I'm loving the variety of North Carolina accents coast to coast. David Ray Allen, what do you think?
So just to build off the scoring point, obviously, yeah, when Jalen Withers is taking the second highest amount of shots on the team, that's not a good sign, I don't think, for this Carolina team. My thought that I'd bring is in this 8-minute stretch that we had talked about last time, the last 4 and the first 4, where UNC excelled, and you saw RJ go off, hit the 3, go back down, and what I thought was going to be an and 1. It still was a little hero ball-y. And that's my question is, when it comes to this offense, is like, where are you going to go when you need a bucket? Even with RJ was having so many contested shots last night, and they were going in, and so it looks great. But in the flow of the offense, even with RJ in, he was making tough shots. And RJ can't make tough shots 4 straight games or 5 straight games in Charlotte. I'll say it right because I was saying Greensboro last week. Couple other things. Obviously, we hit on Drake Powell last week. He was huge again. As I alluded to in a text to you, he ended +2 in the 35 minutes that he was in the game. UNC minus, I think it ended up being 15 in the 5 minutes he's out. And that defensive versatility, what he brings, able to guard Flag, able to rotate off and guard whoever else is on the floor, is so important for this Carolina team. It was a great atmosphere last night at the Smith Center, and at the 15 or 16 minute mark in the second half, it really felt like it was going to be one of those nights where the crowd was able to help bolster bolster this team and get them across the finish line. But it just wasn't that. Weren't able to withhold the Duke offense. And I'll sure we'll talk about this later. But Malik Brown hitting only 2 threes, but the tying his season high. I mean, he hit 2 threes all the rest of the season. That doesn't help either when those shots are going in. So.
Yeah, and we haven't talked much about Duke yet, but I mean, Duke, Mr. Allen said RJ was kind of the only thing offensively for UNC, and they struggled all season to find, consistent scoring from across the roster. I mean, Duke just brings you waves and waves of players, and the size differential was so key. I mean, you roll out RJ and Elliott to start. You got 2 6-foot, 5'11" guards going against 6'5", 6'6" guards and Tyrese Proctor and Sion James. I mean, Duke's inevitable. I mean, they are a great team. I was just waiting for them to kind of slowly take over the game, and that did happen. The size, the rebounding, the block shots in the paint, what made it difficult for UNC to score at the rim for Jalen Washington or Jalen Withers or Van Loom to do anything. And so that kind of leaned on UNC as they slowly took over the second half. All right, Spencer, what you got? Your initial takes on this game?
I sort of thought it was going to be one of those nights a little bit in the second half. With about 15 minutes to go, we've got a 5-point lead or something like that. And I'm looking around at my buddies thinking, like, could this be the night? Could it be? But
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we just kind of, no pun intended here, withered over those last 15 minutes. I mean, Duke, like you said, player after player after player who was just bigger, faster, stronger. And, Carolina just didn't have that answer over those last 15 minutes. I mean, I found myself sort of thinking that, in tight games, certainly during the Roy Williams era, we'd play a close one for 15 minutes, or say 15 minutes left in the second half. And then it'd get to 10 minutes and be like, man, it's still close. And then those last 10 minutes, that margin would just open up because we had Bryce Johnson or we had Kennedy Meeks or we had whoever it was just like down there bullying guys. And we get layup after layup after layup, and our depth hurts teams. And that's kind of what Duke did to us. We had an answer for a long time, hit a bunch of shots in the first half. Like Roy Williams says, everything looks good when the ball's going in the basket. And, we just didn't have 7 or 8 guys to continually keep the pressure on and get stops and get open shots over those last 10 or 15 minutes of the second half. And ultimately, we just didn't have enough juice to bring it home.
Yeah, I thought the offense went very cold in the first half, in the second half after that run. And look, I want to get y'all's take on this. I mean, how do y'all feel about their performance? Like, is it just you chop it up as a loss, and that sucks? Or are you proud? Do you have some silver lining in how UNC stayed in the game? I mean, that, as D-Ray said, it was rocking in there. It was fun, loudest I've heard the Smith Center all year. The run there back and forth in the first half. RJ had a 3 to go up 2 to close the first half. I mean, he was on fire. It was awesome to see that. I was like, whatever happens in this game, a really cool way for RJ to go out in his last game in Smith Center with his performance there. And then to take the lead, let's pull up the scoring here. I mean, I think UNC went up 7 in the second half. Up 7 at the 15:44 mark off a Lubin layup following that Cadeau 3. I mean, that was awesome. It was rocking. It was fun. And you're like, all right, yeah, could they hold on and have enough? But Duke was just too much and just slowly chipped away. And they pulled it off and covered the spread. The spread it closed at 9.5, and I think it was a 13-point game there. Mr. Allen, do you feel as a Carolina fan, like, how do you feel coming off this game? You proud of the Tar Heels? Is it kind of like you chop it up as another loss, or what do you feel about this team now with what happened in the Duke game?
Definitely proud of the effort. I mean, obviously that run, you're talking about being up 7. I mean, they were down 15, and that was with Flag on the bench in the first half. So a lot of credit to Duke for getting that 15-point lead with him saddled with fouls. But again, it's kind of the way things are today. I mean, you can be proud and feel good, but at the same time, you lost by 13 to your arch rival, and are we going to get in the tournament or not? It really now depends on what we do in Charlotte, and they're going to have to make a little run. I think they're going to have to win 3 games maybe to solidify that shot to get in the tournament.
Yeah, we'll talk about ACC tournament seedings later. SMU and Florida State game really changed what's gonna have to be needed from UNC to win now. D-Ray, do you come away feeling any differently? I mean, I'm excited. I mean, it could have been a blowout. It could have been 10-point. First media timeout, second media timeout. Duke coming up 10, and kind of the game's over. But UNC fought at least for the 25, 30 minutes there was pretty fun. Does this change how you feel about this team? Or is it just a loss of a loss?
A little bit. Changes a little bit. I mean, I think there was a moment when we got down 10 or 12 in the first half where I looked over at Dad and just said, this is the moment where it could break open to 20 or 30. And they more or less weathered the storm, and then they had the huge last 4 minutes. I think one positive sign was Carolina played with a ton of physicality last night and more or less didn't get rewarded. There were a ton of interior layups, and maybe a little bit too many from Seth, and as he went 1 for 9, where he's going to the rack and drawing contact and not getting whistles. And that's not always going to happen, but I could see an ACC tournament game where you see Carolina playing with this level of physical intensity, and all of a sudden they're at the line 20 times. And some of the research that I had done last week is that when Carolina shoots like 20-plus free throws, they're winning at like a 90% clip this year. So I do think that I was impressed with that. I know that you asked for silver linings, but just to be negative for one more brief minute, I would say the one thing that I'm still worried about is the Jalen Washington minutes. I thought a lot of the open threes that Duke took last night were plays where Washington was getting screened, and then all of a sudden a dude's flying open in the corner. He had his back to the basket a few times where somebody's landed in on the other side wide open. Lubin has just really stepped up tremendously, and you need something. Washington only played 8 minutes last night, right? You need somebody in those 10 minutes to give Lubin a breather and just be a body, be able to rim run, defend well, not get lost on defense. So again, sorry to take you into negative land there for a second, but
no, I have no problem going negative line. I mean, I don't even know I'm not a huge silver linings guy. I'm not like a sentimental UNC fan when it comes to, I just wanted to give maybe Mr. Allen a little softball there to get things going. Lineup and rotation wise, Spencer, D-Ray mentioned it. Jalen Washington only played 8 minutes. They took Elliot Cadeau out in the first half. He only played 7 minutes, and that's kind of when UNC got things rolling with RJ and Seth and Drake in there. How do you think about the evolution? We haven't had you on a little bit here. What do you think about the evolution of the rotation now, with them leaning on Vanal and Lubin, leaning on Seth and Drake, and Cadeau taking a little bit of a back seat? I mean, he had, I think, a couple quick turnovers, was a little sloppy there to begin the first half, and only ended up playing 7 minutes in that first half.
Yeah, I've loved what I've seen over that 6-game win streak, and then a little bit of last night as well. I mean, seeing Jalen Withers like just finally really step up and hit some buckets and not really bad turnovers or miss loose balls and just kind of those mistakes that we've seen him make over the last couple of years. I kind of felt that Cadeau's playing time was starting to hurt us a little bit because he was just so loose with the ball, and really forcing things. And, again, I liked the lineup changes that we've gotten into over these last 7 games.
What is Cadeau doing wrong? Like, is it just the turnovers and forcing things? Like, what else is Cadeau doing, you think, that makes him more of a liability for UNC? Like, fans seem to really not like him.
Yeah, well, it's 2 things in particular. It's what would be the right term? Sort of low IQ basketball plays, like forcing passes into really tight lanes, driving to the basket in between 3 guys and slinging up some craziness that gets stuffed, and he ends up on the floor because he's throwing up a crazy shot, and then they go 5-on-4 or worse, and and then really bad fouls as well. I mean, last night I I was watching on a little bit of a small TV in a local bar, unfortunately, but like I believe at one point in the first half, he just kind of like flew out of nowhere and fouled a Duke 3-point shooter right at the top of the key. And I was looking at my friends like, wait, what? Like he wasn't even on. Where did he just come from? And he just
Yeah.
hammered some guy shooting a 3-pointer. So last night he made some bad plays at the wrong times, where Carolina needs a bucket or Carolina needs a stop, and we end up with a Cadeau bad shot, a Cadeau turnover, a Cadeau foul. And when those sorts of plays come in the midst of runs, one way or another, they're really hurtful.
Yeah.
And Duke went on a run in the first half, and I'm thinking we got to get him out of there. And Hubert did, and that run sort of subsided for Duke a little bit. Carolina kind of brought things back together a little bit, and so bad plays that seem to happen at bad times for Cadeau.
Yeah, I don't know how the Allens feel about Cadeau, but like when he was out on the bench and UNC was like it was rolling and RJ was nailing shots and UNC was playing really well, I was like, man, this could be the end of the Elliot Cadeau experience at UNC because like you get this guy's a 5-star recruit, you get pulled out during the biggest game of the year at home, like. I mean, why are you even there? So I wonder, I mean, this is a huge offseason topic about what happens with him. We'll find out in the next, month and a half, whether he transfers or not, maybe sooner than that. It'd be interesting to see what happens with his career. The Allens, we'll get you out of here, Mr. Allen. What do you think about Cadeau and the lineup? And I got another question for you, and then we'll let you go and get some coffee before church.
Well, just no respect to the jump shot either. I mean, he hit a 3 last night, but again, when you're defending 4 guys, on offense a lot of times because there's just, and Seth to a certain extent as well. So, I mean, that, again, I think the lack of that consistent scorer from the outside of RJ Davis has hurt us all year, and it continues, and it did last night as well.
Yeah, one thing that I would just say, jumping off what Spencer said on Cadeau, is UNC only had 6 turnovers last night, which is excellent.
Yeah.
4 of them happened at really bad times. The 2 that Cadeau had at the very beginning of the game were brutal starters because everybody's flashing back to the first Duke game where Cadeau had 3 and 4 minutes and immediately gets yanked. And RJ had 2 himself around that 17-minute mark in the second half where, again, a little hero ball-y, and he came out and he made 2 bad passes. And so 6 turnovers is good, but as Spencer alluded to, they were momentum stoppers last night. They were always at the wrong times. And you want to have a point guard who's got his finger on the pulse of the game. And it feels like at times Cadeau presses a little too much when he can relax, and sometimes maybe relaxes too much a little bit when he could press.
I'm a little torn with Cadeau. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the worst thing that you want to feel about your point guard is not wanting the ball in his hands. That's the worst possible thing that you can feel about a point guard, in my opinion. It's like, pass the ball. And there were just times last night, especially in the second half, where I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, okay, there's 10 or 12 seconds left on the shot clock, and Cadeau has the ball on the wing, thinking, oh, no. And that's pretty scathing. Unfortunately, I hate to talk about a guy like that, but that's not the feeling you want with your point guard.
Yeah, and now in this level, this time of basketball, you need your guards to be able to shoot the 3. I mean, it's inevitable. Like it's such a perimeter dominated game as kind of NBA influences go into college. Like you have to be a threat from 3. Cadeau's been better this year, but teams still don't respect him. Like Mr. Allen said, I mean, that was very evident last year against Alabama in the tournament when he was they were not guarding him. And that's a huge thing. You want to be a threat from 3, from, all 3 perimeter. I mean, ideally all 4 perimeter options, with that 4 being a 3-point threat as well. I'm a little torn on Cadeau because we've seen him be so good early in the season, flashes last year. Like when he is on and kind of feeling it and very engaged, he's a great point guard who can distribute. He had 12 assists, I think, in the last game. He can score a little bit and get to the lane. But I think you'll see Hubert move away from these small guards. It's been brutal having 2 5'11", 6-foot guards. You just can't have both those in your lineup. You can maybe have one, but it's just tough with two. It gives you so many defensive issues, and you can't get into the lane and score. It impacts your defense and rebounding, and UNC had two of them this year. You can see, you know, in the next recruiting class, Isaiah Dennis is like 6'5", Derek Dixon's like 6'2", 6'3", so they're getting away from that. So they could lose Davis and Cadeau after the season. All right, Mr. Allen, I got two questions for you to get out of here. How will you remember the RJ Davis career at UNC? I think we need to dedicate some time to RJ Davis.
I mean, RJ had a tremendous career. Obviously, he's finished second in school history in scoring. He's third in ACC, I think now, all time. Just incredible career for him. You know, I feel like this year's been a little bit of a letdown for him. Obviously, coming off the Player of the Year last year, just hadn't found the stroke a lot of times. Last night again, just having to work so hard to get an open shot. I'm like, how can we not, triple screen for him if that's what we have to do to get the guy an open look? But I mean, just a tremendous competitor, and fond memories of RJ in his years at Carolina.
Yeah. We'll talk a little more about him. I mean, I think just staying with UNC, coming in at a weird time, dealing with the COVID stuff, battling the Caleb Love dynamics and the issues there, and been a huge role in some really good UNC teams. All right, last question, Mr. Allen. You've been a principal. How many years have you been a principal?
I was principal 10 at Shelby High. I retired.
Okay. You got one good, crazy principal story you can share with us?
Oh, wow.
Put him on the spot with the principal story. Something that he's allowed to tell. That's the question.
Yeah. I'm sure you've seen some crazy stuff.
I've seen a lot of crazy stuff, honestly. I my favorite thing about being a principal was athletics. I mean, I love athletics, winning 7 football state championships in my 10 years as principal, that was pretty awesome. And so I'll just leave it at that and not get into any crazy stuff. Although I do have a few good ones, I'll have to break out for you sometime.
Ross, can I just say that the football staff calls Dad Jerry because of the way that as alluding to Jerry Jones, the way that he took care of the program and was known to prowl the sideline from time to time. So that's what you're looking at as a principal. DA is Jerry.
I love it. So 7 titles when you were principal in those 10 years?
Yeah, we had 13 state titles all together during my principal 10 years in all sports, but 7 in football.
That's incredible. The home of Dax Holyfield. Who was the best player in those 10 years? Was it Dax?
Oh, wow. Yeah, Dax and Jalen Scott, 2 are the best ones. And, of course, they both went on to play in the ACC and did extremely well.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, appreciate your time, Mr. Allen.
Hey,
we'll let you go. Yeah,
thank you.
Love it. You brought the heat. All business, too. RJ Davis, I mean, I don't know, you want to riff on him a little bit here, too. Like, just a warrior, great scorer, pure scorer, New York guy. Spencer, any takes on him quickly? And we'll move on from this Duke game.
Yeah, I think RJ sort of exemplifies what a lot of players will end up doing in this age of college basketball. Guys who are very clearly great college players, and for one reason or another, know that they may not have an NBA career ahead of them. In RJ's case, he's not tall enough, plain and simple. He has all of the skills. I mean, for a guard, he's actually a great rebounder. Perfectly competent passer, incredible shooter, obviously. Good player all around. But he's too small to play in the NBA. Even in this day and age, no one's leaving college unless they're going straight to the NBA, as it's always been. I mean, we've heard the lore of these like Dean Smith player conversations where it's like he kind of didn't really give you his blessing to leave for the NBA unless he knew you were going to be a top 10 or 15 pick. Now more than ever, because NIL money is such an incredible factor, and the sums that some of these players are getting is astronomical. Guys in the G League, they make like $100,000, $150,000, and not that isn't a lot of money, but that's nothing compared to a lot of guys and what they're making. So he kind of exemplifies what I think we'll see over time is that, guys are going to stay for 4 years because they make significantly more money playing college basketball than they ever will playing professionally. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's tragic that we still have the transfer portal, I think. So, guys will bounce around, but they'll be in college for 3 or 4 years, which again, I think on the whole is a positive thing. And again, RJ's career truly incredible. How many guys at Carolina have that many 30-point games? I mean, very few. And I kind of thought last night we were going to ride the RJ train all the way to a win. And then like we already talked about, he kind of went cold, and we ended up going a little more one-on-one than we would have liked, and the kind of the flow and the screening and the passing dried up a little bit in the second half. But again, gonna miss him. Incredible player in the history of North Carolina basketball program.
I mean, I covered the guy for 2 years. I think one of those years was COVID, so it's kind of weird. But my RJ, last season with RJ, ACC Player of the Year, his jersey will be in the rafters. A 4-year starter, a unique 5-year player, I think, following Leaky Black and Armando Bacot. Double-digit scorer in 3 seasons, 21.2 points last year as a senior. Just an incredible 2023-24 season ACC Player of the Year, number 1 seed in the tournament. But just a bucket, a guy who could always score, get his 3 off, a little New York swag, fun guy, great personality. Just another good, solid, great Tar Heel that won't have a huge NBA career, but you always remember what he did at UNC. Let's see what else happened. Anything else in this game? I think, dude, this Duke team, I don't know, is fun to watch. I don't know what y'all think. They have everything, and it was hard when you have, you have so many options with Knipple and Flagg and Malik Brown and just big burly guards in Sion James. I'm not the biggest Duke hater. I'll kind of enjoy to watch, see how they do in the tournament, but I don't want them to get another title. But I think they're one of the best teams in the nation, and one of the best Duke teams we've seen in the last 20 years. How the pieces work together. So I was happy that UNC put up a good fight, had some fun moments in this game. D-Ray, you were in there. The crowd was rocking multiple times throughout the game. That was great to see, and to have, RJ had a couple moments there. I think we'll remember from that game. Was your dad there, David, with you?
Yeah.
And your wife?
Yeah.
Damn, how many tickets you get?
4 tickets. We were on the back row. The back of it. We were up against the ceiling was the roof, I said to Haley at one point.
That's funny.
I think this Duke team is excellent. I think one thing that I was jealous of is that they just run good action for guys to get open, and it doesn't feel like we do that. I know that you've heard me complain about this on the pod now probably 3 straight appearances, but we set these high screens, and then sometimes you'll get the switch that you want, RJ on a big man, and then RJ still takes a fadeaway 3.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, Duke runs 2 screens and gets a guy open in the corner, and we don't run that a lot of times. And I think I'd love to see Jackson get a couple of those come down. It's half court. Hubert calls out a play, and we run something for Jackson instead of it being ISO ball sometimes. So anyway, I see everything through the prism of what Duke was doing that I wish Carolina would be doing. But it's a talented team. I'm sure they'll make a run. Waves of offense, great defense. Good team, no doubt.
I texted Spencer. I was like, man, we reverted back to a little bit of that standing around there during that cold spell. It was just 4 out, 1-on-1 ball, just no move. I don't get how the wings don't move and cut and run baseline and screen for each other. It's just bizarre the amount of standing still this team does at times throughout the season on offense. And then finally, kind of building on what your dad said, David, RJ didn't get much help. There was no second or third scorer. There wasn't the Seth Trimble game. He was pretty bad, 1 for 9. Didn't really get much at the rim from him. He attacked a lot, just couldn't connect against Duke's bigs. Ian Jackson wasn't spectacular either. You needed one of those guys to have a big game. from three. Drake Powell, he hasn't really been much of an offensive powerhouse in the last couple of games. He was so active on defense, but only 7 points for him, 1 for 4 from three. And then none of the big men really did much. Van Allen Lubin, the second leading scorer with 11 points. Your last words, Spencer, on anything you want to talk to about this Duke game? We'll get out of here.
You mentioned Lubin. He had a pretty good second half, actually. He
Mhm.
hit some big buckets that I thought were came at crucial times, and so again, one of his kind of better games against better competition. Duke, they're just so tough, man. They're very fundamental. They're very well coached. They run tons of great action to get their guys open in the spots that they want them to catch the ball. Great 3-point shooting team. We talked about a little earlier how like Seth Trimble and Elliot Cadeau, teams just leave them open. They dare them to shoot it. And that's good coaching. That's knowing your personnel. It's like, okay, I dare you to beat us by, doing something that you're not the best at. And, the ironic thing about that is that it does sometimes go both ways. And we saw that last night. Malik Brown, I believe that's his name, hits 2 3-pointers, matches his season total because he wasn't being guarded. I mean, I think one time was Jalen Washington and the other time was Van Allen Lubin. And it's like, they knew their personnel. It's like, he's not going to shoot it out there. I mean, how many times did you see him in the first game just catch the ball on the perimeter and casually pass it somewhere else because he's not squaring up and shooting one? But he did last night, and it killed us, So sometimes knowing your personnel, it works out perfectly. And other times knowing your personnel, it works out not perfectly.
Yeah.
So, tough loss. I thought we played hard. The stagnation that we get sometimes is so incredibly frustrating. I found myself a few weeks ago watching Roy Williams secondary break compilations just to sort of feel something and like,
That's
man,
funny.
like Hubert Davis talked early in the season about like how he wanted to be the fastest team in the country. And, we certainly kind of went away from that. We played much more half court ball this year than we did, certainly during Roy Williams era. But, we played much more half court ball in the kind of second 2/3 of the season than we did in the first third or so. And, I was noticing little things like, dude, Isaiah Hicks or whoever it was, like these 4 men snatching the ball out of the rim after a made basket, stepping out of bounds with 1 foot, slinging it to Joel Berry, and we're up scoring with 27 seconds left on the shot clock.
Mhm.
Like incredible speed. And even on times that we tried to run this year, and sometimes we tried to run last night, it was just kind of 3/4 of that. It's like, okay, the ball bounces once, we jump out of bounds. Cadeau not banana peeling around to get some momentum going up court, just standing there and then pushing the ball after he's got it. And, maybe at best we're scoring with 23 or 24 seconds on the shot clock. So there was just like a lot of little things this year and a lot of little things last night that I think just kind of hurt us overall. But again, you talked about kind of sentimental things, moral victories, whatever. I am proud of how they played last night and played very hard. We certainly played one of the better games that we've played in a while. And, still it's losing to Duke, man. It hurts.
Yeah. On Duke, I think they are set up for a lot of success in the next few decades. I mean, John Shire, 37 years old. I've got friends who are Eskimo brothers with him. Like they got things rolling. They're getting 3 or 4 5-stars per class. Next year's class has the Boozer twins, potentially the number 4 player whose name escapes my mind right now. They're recruiting him. They got Shelton Henderson. Like they're rolling in recruiting. They have the NIL general manager thing all figured out. Shire seems like a very intelligent coach who makes the right staff hires. They already got a young assistant going to Miami in Jay Lucas. Like Duke's gonna be good for a long time. with how they're doing things right now. All right, let's move on. Enough of that glazing. ACC tournament. I know David has some stats. UNC is going to be, as I pull up, as all my stuff reloads here, the 5 seed because SMU lost at Florida State in Leonard Hamilton's final game in Tallahassee. It was his 200th win. That knocked SMU down. UNC now into the top part of the bracket, into the 5 seed. That means they'll play Wednesday against the winner of Notre Dame Pitt. Pitt's not awful. They're the 13th seed. They really fell off in the second half of the season. But they'll play the winner of Notre Dame Pitt, and then potentially if they win that, they'll play Wake Forest. Both those games are at 2:30. Now, the issue with this is that because they're on that side of the bracket and are going to play, if they win, Wake Forest instead of Clemson, it doesn't give them the opportunity for a quad 1 win until a matchup with Duke in the semis if they keep winning. Duke's a tough challenge. It's going to be a tough game to win, as we saw last night. So really, SMU losing to Florida State really screwed UNC because they no longer have an opportunity to play Clemson or Louisville, even though Clemson would be a very, very tough matchup as well. Maybe it doesn't even matter. They're going to lose to Clemson and Duke either way. But to get to the tournament, they're going to have to beat Notre Dame and Pitt, beat Wake, and then have to beat Duke. They're going to have to win 3 to get to the championship game in the ACC tournament. If they do that, they're in. If they beat Duke, they're in. But that's a tough, tough matchup, especially now you're in Charlotte, more of a neutral scenario there. So that's the path. Last night was a great opportunity, but UNC is 1-11 in quad 1 wins. They don't have the quality wins. They don't have that many bad losses. The Stanford loss is bad, but they don't have any quality wins except UCLA. D-Ray, give us something, and then we'll get out of here.
Bad spot, honestly. It's a kind of a bad draw for UNC because the 12-13, we beat Notre Dame by, UNC beat Notre Dame by 1, 74-73 earlier in the season, and lost to Pitt by 10. And Pitt was like 14-5 when they beat us. Like Pitt really, as you alluded to, Ross, fell off drastically.
Yeah.
And they lost to Wake by a point. So if UNC was to lose and go, if UNC gets through the first round, they play a team in Wake that they've already lost to once this season. And the old saying is that it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, but Duke is a little bit of a different breed, right? Like I don't know that maxim qualifies perfectly for a UNC Duke matchup. One of the things I wanted to bring up though is that UNC's only won the ACC tournament 3 times in the 2000s. Which is a little bit surprising. UNC has not had a ton of success in the tournament in the last 25 years. And those 3 times, the 08-09 season, the 06-07 season, and the 15-16 season that Spenser was a part of, UNC was a 1 seed in all 3 of those ACC tournament championship runs. And they went on to have good marches, losing to Nova in the championship, losing in the Final Four, and losing in the Elite 8 in all 3. That being said, there's not a great track record for a UNC as a 3 or a 4 or 5 making a run at the ACC tournament. It hasn't historically been what we've excelled at. So I will say, even though I was negative on the 12-13 matchup of Notre Dame and Pitt, I don't hate getting there and trying to get a little bit momentum going into the Wake game, like having the game before. Hopefully, I won't regret saying that if we lose to Notre Dame on Wednesday. But needless to say, there's a glass half empty look at the ACC tournament as we go into it.
The games are 2:30 games. If they were the 6th seed, it'd be all 9:30 games straight through. It'd be 3 straight 9:30 games. So from a media perspective, you always want those earlier games. 2:30 game on Wednesday against Notre Dame or Pitt. Pitt, yeah, speaking of them, I mean, they've lost. They are 3-9 in their last 12. So they really have fallen off. And they've taken some bad losses throughout the ACC. So they've been pretty bad. And Wake, I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, Wake's not an easy contest. Wake's going to be fighting for their tournament life as well. Because if they beat Duke and can make a little run, Wake has a very, very slim option to get into the tournament as well. They need to win the whole thing probably, but Wake's not easy. Spenser, anything on that? You don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Just a quick thing that's a general comment about the ACC. I mean, I remember a time, I tweeted this last night. I remember a time not so long ago when if you were the 5 seed in the ACC, you were like a lock for the NCAA tournament. You know, ACC's getting 7 or 8 bids every year. And so it's just tragic, man. It's just tragic. And and you can see like the difference. The 5 seed in the SEC, you watch the quality of basketball that they play, and they're a very good team. Whoever the 5 seed in the SEC is, I don't even know, but I'm sure they're very good. And that's not the case. I mean, like we've got SMU and Carolina, kind of up and down season, mainly, a little more down than up, and it's just kind of sad that the ACC has just doesn't have the stuff that it's had in past years. And ironically enough, we've got more teams this year, and it's still not any good, So that really stinks.
Yeah, historically bad ACC season. I mean, there's just no way. There's not many chances to get quad one wins, and that's what affected a lot of these teams to get in. There's just the strength of schedule is so bad, and so it's hard to find those quad one wins. Like, they're so rare. Like UNC had to be lined up with Clemson or Louisville to have a chance there. So that will cost them. It'll be interesting. Yeah. Hubert Davis, missed the tournament 2 out of the last 3 years if kind of what we're talking about becomes true. All right, we'll get out of here. Yeah. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com, a great THC beverage. It's fun. It's nice. It's a good little relaxation alcohol substitute. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com. We appreciate Connor on the back end producing this. However happens with when I cut out editing the podcast. We appreciate Garrett on the graphic side of things. Appreciate Spenser and David for waking up early on this daylight savings time morning to talk a little ball, a little Duke game. It's always fun. We all good, guys? All right. Have a great Sunday. We'll talk to you guys later.